Eric and Lyle Menendez could be one step closer to freedom today. The L.A. District Attorney said he supports resentencing for the Menendez brothers, which could mean they're out of prison very soon after spending more than 3 decades in lockup. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. After weeks of anticipation and hype, L.A.'s district attorney today saying he wants a judge to resentence Eric and Lyle Menendez and plans to put that request into writing tomorrow, a move that could possibly set them free if a parole board agrees very soon. District Attorney George Gascon says he will recommend that they get resentenced to a murder charge that comes with the possibility of parole, as opposed to the first-degree charges that came with life with no possible early release. But right now, there is still no timeline on when a judge could decide on the resentencing request. The brothers maintain they shot and killed their parents after being raped and molested by their father for years, and the murders were in self-defense. Now, during their first trial, the testimony and defense led to a hung jury, but in the second trial, evidence of that abuse was barred from being admitted, and the prosecution's case centered around maintaining that the motive was pure greed, that they were convicted of murder in the first degree at that time, and the brothers were just 18 and 21 at the time of the murders. They are now 56 and 53. Their case captivated the world for years, often leading to the subject of shows, movies, documentaries. But it's really the last month and a half that catapulted the case in a way we've never seen before. Much of it centering around the controversial drama series Monsters on Netflix that focused on the case. That sparked massive renewed interest and an outpouring of support for the brothers. And then earlier this month, the DA's office announced that they were reviewing their case. Days later, there was a premiere of another Netflix documentary that rallied even more support for them, including from Menendez family members who held a press conference just last week and overwhelmingly expressed support for their immediate release. And then finally, the DA says he has reached a decision, and here are his comments today.
I have to tell you that after a very careful review of all the arguments that were made for people on both sides of this equation, I came to a place where I believe that under the law, resentencing is appropriate, and I am going to recommend that to a court tomorrow. We are going to recommend to the court that the life without the possibility of parole be removed and that they will be sentenced for murder, which, because there are 2 murders involved, that will be 50 years to life. However, because of their age, under the law, since they were under 26 years of age at the time that these crimes occurred, they will be eligible for parole immediately. When you look at the case of the Menendez brothers, you see 2 very young people. One was 19 and the other one was 21. When they committed these horrible acts, and I want to underline, they were horrible acts. There is no excuse for murder, and I will never imply that what we're doing here is to excuse that behavior, but I understand also how sometimes people get desperate. We often see women, for instance, that have been battered for years, and sometimes they will murder their abuser out of desperation. I believe that they have paid their debt to society, and the system provides a vehicle for their case to be reviewed by a parole board, and if the parole concurs with my assessment, and it will be their decision, they will be released accordingly. There's nothing political about this. We have resentenced over 300 people, including 28 for murder, and we will continue to resentence people in the future, and that's all I can tell you.
NBC News correspondent Dana Griffith joins us in the studio. Gascon says he made this decision a mere hours before the press conference there. What are the reasons that he says led him to this resentencing?
Well, he's looking at 2 pieces of new evidence. One, this letter that a reporter found that alleges that Eric wrote to a cousin who said, hey, who detailed the molestation and the rape. And so that shows that this was happening in this home. And also you've got an affidavit by one of the members of Menudo, the Puerto Rican boy band. He says that he too was also raped by Jose Menendez, then head of our high-profile executive at RCA. So when you combine those two things, and he also says that he's gotten so much feedback, not only from people inside his office, and by the way, he's got people who believe that these brothers should remain in prison for the rest of their life, and others who believe that they should be released today. So I think he just kind of weighed everything and decided, okay, this is my decision. I've looked at the evidence, and I think that had this been a different time, maybe they would have had more leniency. Because think about today's era when we talk about sexual assault, especially with boys. Even their defense attorney says if these were the Menendez sisters, they wouldn't be sitting in prison right now. So while he says that he doesn't agree with the method in which they chose to deal with their abuse by killing their parents, because again, this was premeditated murder, that's why he decided to resentence them. He says there's a family that wants to be reunited. He believes that they've paid their debt to society, and he hopes that the judge will agree, and hopefully a parole board ultimately will agree to release them.
And Dana, this is such a high-stakes moment for Gascon. I mean, there's a re-election coming up. He is 30 points down in the polls. You heard him there say this is not political. Then he gets into like this testy back and forth with a reporter that was asking about it. Says, if you want to talk politics, we'll do it outside. I wasn't able to watch that part, but what did he say afterwards about the politics here?
Well, he pretty much said that that's all there is. This is not political, and what you just said, we can talk about it outside. I think he wants to distance himself from this being a political ploy because the election is coming up soon. And here's the thing, even if he were to lose that election on November 5th, there's still plenty of time for this resentencing to happen. So he may not necessarily gain anything by doing this because he could lose office and still the Menendez brothers may likely walk free by the time December 2nd rolls around and a potentially new DA could be sworn in. You've got a lot of people questioning, you've held this evidence, you've had this evidence for a year, why now? And he addressed it the way he could.
Yeah, very good questions there. So it's not just the entire Menendez family that is supporting the Menendez. We should note that there is at least one uncle of the Menendez brothers that does not support their release, that believes that they should be in prison for the rest of their lives. I believe he filed an amicus briefing in this, right? What's the latest there?
So we have a statement from his attorney. So this is from the attorney for Milton Anderson. He is the 90-year-old brother of Kitty Anderson. And he writes, quote, the new evidence Gascon relies on cannot legally justify overturning the murder convictions of Eric and Lyle Menendez, who meticulously planned and executed the cold-blooded murders of both their parents. And you have several people that agree with this. If they were molested or raped, why kill them when they were just watching television? They had plenty of time to escape if they felt that their lives were in danger. And the DA addressed that. He says, look, that's the reason why I did not go for the manslaughter trial or the manslaughter recommendation, but for murder, because these were two premeditated murders. And this was wrong. So he's trying to, put that line there that this was wrong until you've got this uncle who is also saying that the DA has not kept him abreast of these public press conferences and that he's finding out details of the case through the media and not through the DA. So he's upset with the DA and how he's handled informing him about how this announcement was going to be made. So not everyone agrees, but you've got a lot of followers. We were hearing that you've got TikTokers out there outside the courthouse just trying to get in on this. So it's a very highly anticipated turn of events in this case. Yeah,
fascinating, especially when that uncle has the support of what it sounds like are some members of the team inside of the DA's office, and they may be presenting to the judge as well. A lot that we'll be watching for in the next coming weeks. Dana, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris. Misty, thanks so much for joining us. Moments after the presser, Gascon spoke with NBC's Laura Jarrett about his decision. Let's just play some of that for us right now and take a look.
If there had not been a Netflix documentary, would we be having this conversation right now?
The conversation would have come in, but it probably would have come in another week or two.
Why the timing so close to the election?
This has nothing to do with the election. This has to do with the workload of the office.
And so, Missy, what do you make of the timing of this announcement, considering the recent documentaries and then Gascon's election bid here?
Yeah, so, I was actually pretty stunned that Gascon said in the press conference that one of the reasons we were hearing about this case now was because of the public interest, was because of the documentaries, and that the office was being flooded with letters, and he felt that this was the appropriate time. Of course, it's coming at a time when the election is also right around the corner, and there's been a big movement by many individuals who have had a renewed interest in this case and wanted to see the Menendez brothers go free or at least have a reduced sentence. So certainly he got in there and he addressed the timing. But it's important to note that, as he said, this is one case, really public, of course, but it's part of a larger resentencing initiative in California. 300 other cases where resentences happened, 28 of those life sentences without parole. So it shouldn't be looked at in a vacuum, although the timing, by his own admission, related to the public interest in the case.
And following up on that, I mean, so with all these cases and with all this resentencing that's going on in California, do you have any insight into like how the judge's decision is going to go? Does it seem like the judge is going to just take the recommendations for the DA and go off of that?
Of course, the prosecutor's recommendation, it means a lot to the judge, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the day and it's over. First of all, victims' rights laws in California allow for the victims to have the opportunity to speak. So we could hear from the Menendez family, some of whom are in support of the brothers being released, as we just spoke about, Kitty's brother, who is not. There's also victims' rights advocates who are against their being released. So we're going to see a hearing. Now, we know this complaint is going to be filed tomorrow, and that will start the process. And at some point, the judge will hold the hearing. What I found really interesting is that we can expect to see other prosecutors in that office actually laying out why they disagree with the decision. So ultimately, a judge is going to decide. And another factor that is likely to come out, whether or not that note that serves as a large part of the basis, the veracity of that note is going to be challenged on timing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just play this out. What does it look like when the DA is presenting in front of a judge on what is usually like this side of the courtroom, and then there is, I don't know, an opposing member of the DA's office introducing or arguing the complete opposite side in front of the same judge? Logistically, what are we going to be seeing there?
Yeah, usually you see prosecutor versus defendant. Here, the defense counsel is going to agree with the prosecutors. But what we're likely to see is some evidence that came out from the initial trial relating to the other alleged motivations for the crime, which was financially motivated. Also, there might be an argument relating to how, sure, both parents were killed, but only one of the parents was an abuser. Why was Kitty killed as well? So those are the arguments you're going to hear on one side. But it's important to note the factors that are taken into consideration in the resentencing program that we're talking about. Rehabilitation, whether or not it be looked at from a different lens. And so this is going to be a more limited inquiry for the judge to decide.
Misty, it's going to be a fascinating case indeed, and we're hoping that you'll rejoin us soon.
Of
Misty,
course.
thank you.
Thank you.
And joining us now is Robert Rand. He's the author of The Menendez Murders, the shocking untold story of the Menendez family and the killings that stunned the nation, and Esther Reyes, the director of Peacock, the docu-series Menendez and Menudo, Boys Betrayed. Welcome to you both. I've read your book and I've watched the series, and incredible journalism all the way through. But Robert, you actually are in pretty regular contact with the Menendez brothers, right? Have you spoken to them today? What's going through their mind?
I've not spoken to them today, but we did visit Menendez a week ago Friday.
And how did they see all of this playing out? Did they think that we would see what we're seeing today?
We were visiting with Lyle, and he was cautiously optimistic, but he was not ready to admit that everything was going to happen.
Do you think that they are still going to be cautiously optimistic, or based on what we've seen so far, does this look kind of like a done deal?
I think this looks very good for them, but I know them both very well for over 35 years, and I think they will wait until the next step happened in court.
And Esther, how much of the renewed attention on this case from the docuseries, from what we saw on Netflix, from the letter that you found there, how do you see the timeline playing out here?
I think that it's really interesting to see the renewed interest. Certainly, the evidence that we brought forth in the Peacock documentary via Roe Rosillo's testimony had a huge impact. The letter that Bob found at Marta Cano's house, from Eric to Andy Cano, has also had a huge impact. And just to echo what Bob was saying, we're actually here in Mark Garagos's restaurant where he had the family's press conference this afternoon. And to be around the family, there's sort of, again, cautious optimism. This is definitely a step in the right direction, but at the same time, they're still trepidatious. They're still not kind of counting their chickens before they hatch. And I think also, having spoken with Lyle recently, that's sort of the sentiment that he expressed too. It's like too soon to get excited. They had it. The most recent habeas was in 1998, which is 26 years ago. So they've been down this road before where there's been a habeas and it has not necessarily turned out the way they wanted. So I think, all to say that this is wonderful news, but they're also just, again, just waiting to see what happens in the days to come.
We will be waiting and to see what happens as well. Robert and Esther, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And turning now, sure. And turning now to a longtime NBC Los Angeles reporter, Conan Nolan. Conan, I mean, you covered the original trials here. You've seen so many changes in how this has been portrayed here in Los Angeles through the years. What sticks out to you about this?
The timing, for one thing. Keep in mind, Gadi, that the district attorney was looking into this case well over a year ago. It comes to a head, you pointed out, with a documentary on television streaming, the Peacock episode. Of course, there's this surge in interest in true crime throughout platforms. That's notable. But also locally, the district attorney, who's a leading progressive of prosecutors around the country in his approach to criminal justice reform, he is facing a re-election campaign that's extremely difficult in a matter of days. And that's one of the interesting things about this case, is that some have suggested that it's part of this, that he certainly needed something to get back on the radar of progressives in Los Angeles County, the nation's most populous county, and this is a case that did that for him. Is it a coincidence? Two things can be, happen at once. One is that this is in the wheelhouse of a district attorney who's progressive, has talked about cases people being too harshly sentenced. His office has gone after resentencing for scores of cases, including 38 other murders. But it's also giving him some face time with a community he needs to turn out to vote for his reelection, and that is progressives in L.A. County.
Yeah, and young progressives that are on TikTok that are following all of the developments on social media. Conan, I got to say, I was watching your reporting a little bit earlier today. You painted this political picture at the time with then DA Gil Garcetti way back in the day, and the loss of another very high-profile case right before this one. We've talked a lot about whether today's decision was political, but remind us of the political play after the first trial and what Los Angeles was going through.
Well, there was a period where if you were a celebrity, you could not get a guilty sentence in Los Angeles County. And the district attorney, of course, there was the O.J. Simpson case. There was the case. You can even go back to Robert Blake. Remember when he was on trial for murdering his wife, and he was exonerated. There was a lot of pressure for the district attorney to refile this case after there was a hung jury in the first trial. Gil Garcetti decided to do that. And the public opinion with regard to these two defendants, teenagers at the time, was that they were guilty, that this was not a matter of abuse, that the individuals who could testify in their defense on that abuse charges were conveniently murdered by the brothers. So, yeah, there's always some politics when it comes to a district attorney that is elected, particularly one who's facing a difficult re-election.
And just to kind of clarify this for my own sake, and I don't like to play what ifs, especially that far back, but coming right off of the loss of the O.J. Simpson case for the district attorney here in Los Angeles, within days, they have a hung jury in this case. If Gil Garcetti at the time would have said, you know what, hung jury, we're not going to retry this case, what do you think would have happened?
He would not have won re-election. I don't think there's any doubt about that, Gadi. That's where you're going with this. Certainly. Remember, though, there wasn't a whodunit as there was sort of in the O.J. Simpson case. People weren't sure who the guilty party was. We knew who the guilty party was in this case. They had used shotguns, and after they weren't able to kill the mother, they went and back outside and reloaded the shotgun and put the barrel up against her cheek. So the graphic nature of this case, knowing who did it, yeah, there's no way they wouldn't have re-prosecuted that case.
Some things change and some things don't. Conan Nolan, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Another day closer to Election Day. The pitch is being made in battleground states by both Vice President Harris and former President Trump. An in-depth look at brand new polling from Gen Z voters, the issues they're focused on as they get ready to cast their ballot. Plus, North Korea might be sending Russia more than 12,000 troops. How this is going to impact the war in Ukraine and why the U.S. is calling these soldiers, quote, fair game. And later this hour, the potential dangers of AI chatbots. One family's claim that conversations led to their son's death. The growing concerns in tonight's Future of Everything. Hey, welcome back. Here are some of the headlines we're watching tonight. There's a new lawsuit that accuses Vince McMahon and the WWE of knowing about and failing to stop the sexual exploitation of young boys by a ringside announcer, some of them only 12 years old. Now, the suit claims the assaults happened at wrestling events and hotels and other places, and NBC News has reached out to the McMahons, TKO, and WWE for comment. So far, we haven't heard back. A teenager was arrested for allegedly planning a drone attack on an annual Pride Festival in Arizona. Now, officials say Marvin Jallo bought the chemicals online to make a bomb, planning to carry it out with drones. On his phone, they say Jallo had multiple instruction videos of ISIS fighters making explosives. The 17-year-old is now facing charges of terrorism and conspiracy. Next, the death of the most famous bear in the country. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says the bear, also known as Grizzly 399, was killed by a car crash on a highway in Wyoming. Now, the superintendent has called her the most prominent ambassador for the species, inviting lots of people to visit the park. She gained her household name after she was featured in an episode of PBS's Nature documentary series. And a man is claiming his dog died on a recent Alaska Airlines flight when his seat was changed from first class to coach. The man says he explained to flight attendants that moving dogs right before takeoff is dangerous, but the staff dismissed his claim. And earlier today, there was a party in the streets celebrating the New York Liberty's first ever championship win. Thousands of fans were in attendance for the parade and got to see their favorite WNBA stars. The team was also given the key to the city. And breaking news tonight on the deadly Baltimore Bridge collapse from March of this year. The Department of Justice says the owners of the ship that crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge will pay a $100 million settlement. That'll settle a civil suit brought by the United States to cover the costs of the response to that disaster. Now, there are still dozens of outstanding civil lawsuits outside of this case, including one from the state of Maryland against the owners of the Dolly. Those could result in additional damages. And tonight, Vice President Harris is in Georgia with some of the biggest stars on the planet, while Donald Trump has been making a hard play for the southwestern battleground states of Arizona as well as Nevada. And with just 12 days left until Election Day, a new CNBC poll shows that the race could not be any closer. Trump is ahead by 2 points over Harris, but since that lead is within the margin of error, either candidate could actually be ahead right now. And like we mentioned a few seconds ago, Harris is in Georgia right now. She just wrapped up with the likes of Barack Obama, Bruce Springsteen, and Samuel L. Jackson. And tomorrow, she's scheduled to be in Texas with the one and only Beyonce. NBC White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist is in Atlanta right now. Aaron, the Democrats, they use a lot of mainstream celebrities to try to get out the vote. How effective is this so close to Election Day?
Gadi, I'll tell you, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I actually didn't hear anything you just said, but I can sort of give you an idea of what is happening here on the ground as we try to get our audio reestablished. As you said, the Vice President just finished speaking here a few minutes ago. This was an event that was designed as the beginning of a concert series that's designed to sort of get people energized about actually voting. The campaign has spent months talking about how there's been this enthusiasm surrounding the Vice President. You're looking at some of the live pictures here where she is working the rope line, shaking hands with people who were closest to the stage as she was speaking, now engaging with some of those people one-on-one here right outside the city of Atlanta in Clarkston, Georgia. And the idea here for this event was to encourage people to actually vote, to take that enthusiasm that they've had for these many months and actually make sure they go out to the polls and vote on November 5th. And as a matter of fact, vote early. The Vice President said that in her remarks here today. She was joined prior to coming to the stage here. We also heard from former President Barack Obama, who did the same thing, encouraged people to get out to vote. He talked a lot about Donald Trump and why he believes he's not fit for office. And he talked a lot about Vice President Harris and why he believes that she is fit for office. We also heard from some of those celebrities you talked about. Bruce Springsteen performed and spoke as well. Tyler Perry gave a lengthy speech, again, telling stories, all of them storytellers by profession in a way, telling stories about why they believe that Vice President Harris is the person for whom they should all be voting, and that they should go back from this place, Gadi, to their homes, to their friends, and talk about what they believe to be the reasons that Vice President should be the person that all other people in this area vote for. We know, obviously, that Georgia is very much a swing state, and it's one that is critically important for whoever is going to win the presidency next month.
Aaron Gilchrist out there in Atlanta. Aaron, thank you. And like we said, former President Trump is out west tonight campaigning in the battleground states of Arizona as well as Nevada. And he held a rally in Tempe, Arizona earlier today, trying to make a play for the college crowd on the campus of Arizona State University, where he attacked his opponent yet again on immigration.
But if you want, vote. When we win on November 5th, the migrant invasion ends and the restoration of our country begins. We're going to restore our culture. November 5th, 2024 will be called Liberation Day in America. We're going to be liberated.
Trump's next stop is a rally in Las Vegas, scheduled to kick off a little less than 2 hours from now to address the Asian American and Pacific Islander community alongside GOP opponent one-time opponent Vivek Ramaswamy and one-time Democratic presidential candidate turned Republican Tulsi Gabbard. Now let's bring in NBC News correspondent David Noriega from Las Vegas. David, tell us a little bit more about Trump's play for the AAPI community. We haven't really seen a lot of that recently.
Yeah, look, Gadi, I don't think anyone would say that this is a central plank of the Trump campaign, but you do have to think of it in the context of the campaign's efforts to reach other minority demographics, Latino voters, black voters, young voters, working class voters. That is taken together a constituency that's very well represented in Nevada and specifically in Clark County, where Las Vegas is, where I am right now. And those are key demographics that have historically been important parts of the Democratic coalition, but where that support has been eroding and where Trump has been making gains. So something like tonight's event, which is specifically targeted at Asian American Pacific Islander voters, is part of this attempt by the Republican Party and the Trump campaign specifically to position itself as the new party of the working class multiracial coalition, which was once the claim of the Democrats. There are a lot of Asian American people in attendance at this rally. Interestingly, a lot of them drove here from California. Actually, they're not Nevada residents. Most of the ones we spoke to told us they came here especially from Southern California because, you know, Trump very rarely makes appearances in California, and they wanted to see him in person while they still had the chance. This shift away from the Democrats towards the Republicans by these minority demographics, Gadi, I think there's a lot of debate around this. It's a contested kind of hypothesis, whether it bears out, to what extent it bears out, and whether it's a part of a lasting trend. That's one of the main storylines going into Tuesday, November 5th. Gadi?
And so many of those storylines, you know, they take form in the conversations that you were just having. Tell us a little bit more about what you were hearing from those that are in attendance.
Yeah, so look, a lot of the people at this rally are, in fact, those people that the Trump campaign has boasted about its gains, you know, like young people, young men, young Latinos. For example, we spoke to a young Latino man outside the rally this morning. I asked him, you know, if there was anything that might change his opinion about Donald Trump. He said, absolutely not. He's going to support him no matter what. I asked him whether he thinks this election is close. He really doesn't. He basically thinks that this is a done deal. The people at this rally are people who are fully committed to Trump. I want to play you just a little bit of what this young Latino man told me when I asked him these questions. Take a listen.
I think he's got it in the bag. I think people are, like you said, sick of the unsecured border, sick of prices and inflation. I think he's just got to do everything he's currently doing. He's been here several times, and as you can see from the preparation of this event, it's expected to be a very large event.
It is a pretty large event. This arena is pretty full. Gadi, one of the main things the campaigns try to do at this late stage is juice turnout, juice enthusiasm among those committed supporters. That's what we're seeing here tonight in Las Vegas. Gadi.
David Noriega out there in Vegas for us. David, thank you. And Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are locked in a dead heat in a lot of battleground state polls. But among Gen Z voters, polls are telling a different story. According to our latest NBC News Stay Tuned poll powered by SurveyMonkey, 50% of registered voters under 30 years old are planning to vote for Harris. 33% say they are casting their vote for Trump, and the remaining said that they would vote for someone else or no one at all. Now, the poll also reveals a significant gender divide. Harris leading among young women by 33 points, but men under 30 are more evenly split, supporting Harris over Trump by only 2 points. Let's bring in NBC News Now anchor Savannah Sellers to break down all these findings. Savannah, thanks so much for being with us. Among these registered voters under 30, what was the issue they said they care about the most?
Hi, Gadi. Well, it's so fun to be on my best friend's show. Thanks for having me and keeping me up late. So, yes, let's get into the issues. But I am going to talk a lot about that gender divide because it's quite interesting. And one note there on what you said about that bigger number for Harris. I will point out, though, that that is a smaller lead for Democrats to have than they historically have had at this point in an election. So could be a little bit of alarming news there for them. And certainly on the point that Donald Trump has been making a concerted effort with young men, and that is where we are seeing that difference in the number, that young men are evenly split, not with Gen Z, like is often the case, breaking more Democratic. Let's talk issues, though, like you asked. So the cost of living and inflation, as you can see on your screen right now, that is far and away for both men and women the issue that matters the most to them. I am going to make one more gender comment, though, and break something out that is not on this screen right now. You'll see abortion, when this is factored in with both men and women, is down there at third with 9%. If you break that out by gender, I think this is interesting. Abortion, for women, that was the second most important issue right there, at 13%, when only 4% of men said abortion was their most important issue. And I say that of note because a lot of young female voters that I've been speaking with out in battleground states like in Wisconsin, like in Georgia, they say that abortion they think is a really motivating issue. That could be the one that actually gets them and their friends to turn out at the polls.
It seems like in this last 2 weeks, there's a lot of playing to the margins when it comes to both campaigns. Did anything else stand out to you from this poll that kind of supports that?
Yeah, Gadi, you know, a number that's not great, to be honest with you, really stands out to me. It is how young people feel really about the state of our country, if we're on the right track or the wrong track. 77%, look at this stat, think that we are headed in the wrong direction, while only 22% say that we are on the right track. One other thing, and I know I keep on bringing up this gender divide, but I just do think it was the most revealing thing out of this poll that I think is interesting, is when it comes to temperament, because we're also hearing that thrown around a lot, right, between the candidates, something, by the way, that young people are very tired of hearing, is these jabs at each other. But we hear them both talking about, is the other fit to be president? Well, more men than women say that former President Trump has the temperament to lead the country, while more women than men say that Harris has that temperament to lead. Another interesting point there when it comes to gender.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's throw the numbers to the side for just a quick second, because so often when you even try to talk about polls or numbers with people that are in our cohort or like younger, they're like, yeah, no, like it's vibes. And these are the vibes that I'm feeling right now. You got a chance to spend some time with Gen Z voters. Like, what are the vibes going into Election Day?
Yeah, I'd say the vibes are not great, if I'm being completely honest with you, and you're going to hear some sound that proves that. But it has to do with two things, Gadi. I would say the first is that right track, wrong track thing that we're talking about. They feel like this has just been so divisive. They are no longer wanting to hear these jabs that candidates are throwing at each other. One young voter in Wisconsin told me, I was just at a funeral last week, and the only thing that people were talking about at a funeral was politics. That is not right. It does not feel good to me. I want this to end. I, of course, was also talking with voters in a swing state where their vote's valuable, and so their mailboxes are jam-packed full of political flyers. The airwaves on TV, all that they are playing are political ads. You can't take 10 steps on this campus of University of Wisconsin-Green Bay without being asked if you are registered to vote. Take a listen to some of what they had to say.
It's a lot of excitement, but also just kind of apprehension and a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of information flying around, and you kind of have to pick and choose what to believe or what not to believe.
I'm not happy with the way the country is moving in a general direction. Like, we are in decline. We're a country in decline right now. So I think we need to make America great again, and that's the foundation of what Trump is trying to do with his policies.
Those were two voters on two different ends of the spectrum there, Gadi. Tanisha voting for Harris, planning to, and Levi there planning to vote for Trump, as you just heard. The good news, though, Gadi, encouraging thing out of this, far and away, 84%, if you add up all the different, very likely, almost certain, all the different ways that you could say, I am going to vote. Most Gen Z say that they will turn out at the polls, which is, of course, always a major question. Are we going to see that or not?
Always a major question, but what is not a question is Savannah Sellers and her ability to cover the vibes. That's why, I was begging you to stay up late for this hit. I know you have the earliest show on NBC News now, but thank you so much.
You are so welcome. For you, always. Thanks for having me, Gadi. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow morning. And up next, the latest in the E. coli outbreak linked back to McDonald's onions. The FDA is now involved in taking a look at the fast food giant suppliers. New details are straight ahead.
I'm in Colorado, which is where more than half of these cases tied to McDonald's have emerged. Gadi.
Fascinating. Breach of implied warranty. Something to read up on later. Thanks so much, Maggie.
Absolutely. Sure.
And still ahead, thousands more North Korean troops are apparently getting ready to help Russia. What does this strengthening alliance mean for the war in Ukraine? And what does it mean to the world at large? An expert joins us to discuss, coming up next. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. More than 20 people were killed in the Philippines as a massive tropical storm barreled through the country today. And cars were swept away in raging floodwaters, with some people trapped on top of roofs. The storm even triggering landslides and forced over 150,000 people to flee their homes. And the World Health Organization says Israeli strikes have forced them to postpone its polio campaign in Gaza, where the goal was to vaccinate some 100,000 children. Now, the vaccination campaign started last month when a baby was paralyzed by polio in Gaza for the first time in 25 years. And a summit in the island nation of Samoa is making reparations for slavery part of this year's agenda. King Charles heads up the leaders of the British Commonwealth who gathered there today. Now, the British Prime Minister says the country would not bring the issue to the table and will not apologize for it, but he says he's open to the discussion. And tonight, a serious warning from South Korea, which says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may be sending up to 12,000 troops to Russia to aid in its war against Ukraine. NBC's chief international correspondent Keir Simmons has the latest on this escalation.
Well, President Putin wrapping up the BRICS summit here in Kazan, Russia, and very likely he will have considered it a success. He had a series of meetings with important world leaders, including, of course, President Xi of China, President Pezeshkian of Iran, but others too. Prime Minister Modi of India, President Sisi of Egypt, and a number of other partners of the U.S., both trade partners and strategic partners. President Erdogan of Turkey was here, not a member of the BRICS coalition, but Turkey saying that it wants to be. So President Putin will consider these last few days to be a way in which he has been able to reimpose himself, if you like, on the world stage, albeit that he still will not be able to travel to many countries after his war in Ukraine. And at the same time, there were those reports this week that North Korean troops have been seen here in Russia, perhaps more than 3,000, according to the US. I got the chance to ask President Putin about those allegations. This is the first time he's talked about them. Take a listen.
Satellite images are said to show North Korean troops here in Russia. What are they doing here? And wouldn't that be a massive escalation in the Ukraine war? And Mr. President, we are weeks away from the US election. Russia again is accused of interfering, and that you have had private conversations with former President Trump. Have you been speaking with him, and what have you been saying?
The actions of Russia have not escalated things in the Ukraine, but the US have certainly done that. They've even publicly declared how much money they're pouring into it. This is our business. We have to have further negotiations with North Korea. We'll see how that goes. We've been accused over the last year of intervening in the American elections in favor of Trump, but this is complete rubbish.
So President Putin denying that there have been private phone calls between him and former President Trump, describing it all as nonsense, going on to say in a separate answer that it's up to the American people to choose their president, and it will be up to that president to decide what relationship the US will want with Russia. Those allegations of those phone calls first came out in a book by the veteran journalist Bob Woodward. It should be said that so far there has been no other evidence that they really did take place, and President Putin there saying or suggesting that they did not. Whether you believe him or not, well, that's a different question.
Keir Simmons taking those questions straight to Vladimir Putin. Keir in Russia for us tonight. Keir, thank you. And NBC News Foreign Affairs contributor Dr. Victor Shah joins us now. He's also the Senior Vice President for Asia and Korea at the Center of Strategic and International Studies. Dr. Shah, thanks so much for being with us. What can you tell us about North Korea's military capability, and exactly what does North Korea get out of something like this?
Well, their support of Russia, both in terms of munitions and troops, has allowed Putin to sustain the war in Ukraine. They've given like 6 million rounds of ammunition, which Russia needs. And now the troops are really a step up. It shows the North is all in. What the North is trying to get out of it is money, food and fuel, but also higher end military technology to perfect their own nuclear weapons programs.
So this is a lot of low-tech aid that's going into Russia, and now, I guess, manpower in exchange for possibly a higher tech and money. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right, because for the first time in the history of this relationship, the North Koreans have the upper hand. I mean, Putin needs to win this war to survive, right? Everybody knows that. And the North Koreans can, it's transactional. They can exact a higher price for sending troops that will allow Putin, at least temporarily, to not do a second mobilization, which would be domestically unpopular. So this is like very good timing for the North Koreans, and they're going to exact as high a price as they can.
And how many troops do you think we could see moving from North Korea into Russia and possibly into Ukraine?
So it's hard to say right now. I think the estimates are up to 12,000, I think, as your package said in the beginning. This is still a very small number in terms of the overall force that the Russians have deployed. It's like barely 1%. And so on the battlefield, I'm not sure how much of a difference it will make, but the broader ramifications are, as I said, the North Koreans are all in with the Russians. There's no country can do more for another than to send ground troops. And the North Koreans are going to use this to try to improve their weapons program, which have major ramifications for the United States and our homeland security.
According to South Korea's defense minister, North Korean soldiers are apparently being disguised as Russians and then acting directly under the Kremlin's command. What does that tell us about how they're going to be using North Korea's troops? And are we even going to be able to tell what is a North Korean soldier and who is a Russian soldier?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very hard to tell unless they are killed or captured in Ukraine. Again, I think this is so the North Koreans can maintain some sort of plausible deniability. But the South Koreans, the United States, the Ukrainians have made very clear, as Kirby did from the podium the other day, that these are North Korean troops that are going in. And it wouldn't surprise me if the administration, the Biden administration, provided more information so that the world understood that this was exactly the case.
Such fascinating insight, Dr. Victor Cha. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything, the potentially dangerous and unintended consequences of chatbots. The questions being asked following a teenager's death by suicide and his family's calls for accountability. And in tonight's Future of Everything, the potentially dangerous consequences of AI. In at least one case, there are allegations that messages from a chatbot may have led to a teenager's death. These are those messages. Please come home to me as soon as possible, my love. And then, what if I told you I could come home right now? And then the AI responds, please do, my sweet king. That was the last conversation 14-year-old Soul Setzer had with an AI chatbot minutes before dying by suicide back in February. His entire family was home at the time.
He was in his bathroom. I found him. We found him, and I held him for 14 minutes until the paramedics got there. By the time I got to the hospital, he was gone.
That was his mom, Megan Garcia, who is now suing the artificial intelligence chatbot character AI, claiming the chatbot is responsible for her son's suicide. The suit calls character AI, quote, defective and dangerous, and says it initiated abusive and sexual interactions with her child. The platform offers hundreds of pre-made and user-created characters to interact with, and each has a distinct personality. And one of the bots Setzer was using took the identity of Game of Thrones character Daenerys Targaryen. A spokesperson for the company says that they are heartbroken by the loss of one of their users, but his mom says that is not enough. Now, joining us to break this all down is NBC News legal analyst Angela Sinandela. Angela, so can AI be at fault here?
Yeah, Gadi, look, I think it is very likely, and this is why. The chatbot is a product. Anytime a company puts forth a product, markets it to children, and then could be reasonably associated with that child's death, then there is a reasonable chance for a lawsuit to proceed. Now, look, there's a lot of different claims in this lawsuit. The hardest to prove from the plaintiff's side will likely be wrongful death because it is a suicide. And there, then, the company could push back and say there's many other reasons that caused this death. But that's not all that's in the lawsuit. There are also claims for unjust business practices, fraud, false marketing, unjust enrichment. And those, I think, are huge and very strong. I'm reminded here of, for example, the Juul settlement that just happened, these Juul vaping pods that companies paid almost $1 billion for addicting children and not warning children and their parents of the addictive behavior that's involved. Also, with the social media litigation that's happening. Now, none of these have necessarily resulted in wins, but judges across the country have been greenlighting multi-district litigation against like Meta, TikTok, and Facebook for really being responsible for creating addicting patterns in children and for not warning them. So there's a lot here that could move forward, Gadi.
And we've heard the statement from Character AI, and they talk about how they plan to implement new safety measures, including things like improved detection and intervention. There's a time spent notification, reminders that AI isn't real. Does that help with the legal case at all here?
So it doesn't at all help with this past legal case because all of this happened prior to these new safety measures. But this is imperative for the company moving forward, and this is why. Right now, the company is on notice, so they know that this death has happened and could possibly have been linked to their own product. As a result, their liability moving forward is actually much bigger because they can't claim they didn't know. Knowingly doing something and not knowing is a big difference. So moving forward, that could potentially help with additional litigation, but not with Megan Garcia's lawsuit, Gadi.
And Angela, I mean, this is not the first time Character AI has come under fire. First time for this type of case, but they've been called out in the past over their chatbots impersonating real people, both some alive, some dead without their consent. Can they face legal action on that as well?
So that is possible, and that would depend on the party, whoever it is that was injured, whoever's likeness was used without their consent. In general, you cannot use anyone else's likeness for money without their consent. So that wouldn't necessarily be, for example, Megan Garcia or any user putting forth that lawsuit, but those people whose identities were taken and repurposed could possibly have a claim there, Gadi.
A dangerous world we're headed into. Angela Sinandela, thank you so much. And for people struggling and considering suicide, help is always available. Call or text the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. You can always reach out online at 988lifeline.org. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.